So starting with the surgical anatomy of the eyelids as relevant to eyelid malpositions. The eyes and eyelids, as we all understand and agree, add majorly to the facial beauty. The upper eyelid extends from the eyebrow down to the free margin of the upper lid, and the lower margin starts from just inferior to inferior limbus and it merges down into the skin of the cheek. The upper lid and lower eyelid meet at medial and lateral canthi. The lateral canthus is placed 2 mm above the medial canthus, and this relation should be maintained in surgeries where we are disrupting the lateral canthal angle, as in cases of lateral tarsal slit procedures. The lid margins, they oppose each other and are nearly flat, around 2 mm in width. It is divided into two parts by lacrimal papilla. The medial portion is the lacrimal portion, which is rounded and devoid of lashes or glands, and the ciliary portion is rounded anterior border and a sharp posterior border. Eyelashes are arranged in 2 to 3 rows, and keratopathy can occur because of disorientation of lashes, as in cases of trichiasis, or if the position of lashes is not normal, as in cases of dystrichiasis, where the lashes are present as an extra row at the meibomian gland orifices. The eyelid anatomy and the structure is best understood in a sagittal cross-section, where from without inwards we see different layers of eyelid, starting from skin, the subcutaneous tissue, orbicularis oculi muscle, next to the submuscular areolar tissue, then the fibrous layer, which is consistent of tarsus and the orbital septum. The lid retractors come behind that, and then the retroseptal fat pads, Muller's muscle, and the conjunctiva. We should understand that the lid is best explained in 2 divided planes. That is, the lid can be divided as anterior lamella and posterior lamella. The anterior lamella is consistent of skin and orbicularis muscle. Posterior is made up of tarsus and the Muller's conjunctiva. Any pathology which we encounter in lids, entropion, ectropion, is best explained as the pathology happening either in anterior lamella or posterior lamella. And any reconstruction we do is either in the anterior lamella or the posterior lamella. The fibers of orbicularis muscle, which are present at the lid margin, are the muscle of Ryan, and they help in proper positioning and apposition of the lid margin to the glue. The grey line is a very important surgical landmark, as division through the grey line separates the lid from the submuscular space into anterior and posterior lamella. Also, in cases of surgeries where we are decreasing the horizontal length of the lid in entropions and ectropions, for marginal repair, the first and middle suture is passed through the grey line. Thus, it is a very important surgical landmark. The skin of the eyelid, as we all know, is thinnest in the body, and the subcutaneous tissue has no fat. Thus, it is easy to take grafts from the skin for any of the cicatricial ectropion cases, and it also best matches in color and texture to the other periocular tissue. Orbicularis oculi muscle has a peripheral orbital part, then the palpebral part, which is further divided into preseptal, which is in front of the orbital septum, superiorly as well as inferiorly, and the pretarsal part in front of the tarsus in the upper lid as well as the lower lid. The orbicularis oculi muscle originates from the bones here, from the anterior lacrimal crest, from the superficial and deep parts of the medial canthal tendon, the maxillary process of the frontal bone and the frontal process of the maxillary bone, and it joins together from the superior and inferior parts to meet in the lateral graphic hair. The submuscular areolar tissue consists of variable loose connective tissue below the orbicularis oculi muscle, and the lid, as spoken before, may be split into anterior and posterior portions through this potential plane by giving an incision on the grey line. The nerves and arteries of the lid are present in this space, and thus anesthesia in this plane is very effective. Tarsal plates form the fibrotic skeleton of the eyelid. They are around 25 to 29 millimeters in length, 1 millimeter in thickness, and the upper tarsus is of around 10 to 12 millimeters in height, and lower is of around 4 millimeters to 5 millimeters in height. This is important to know because in cases of tarsal wedge dissections and tarsotomies in cicatrician and tropion, we need to give incisions on the tarsus accurately. Medial canthal tendon has a superficial and deep part or the anterior and posterior reflection, and it forms the vertical facial support. In cases of medial canthal tendon ligations, we need to do it deep at the level of deep part of the medial canthal tendon so that the lid is not pushed away from the glove. Lateral canthal tendon is thinner and is 7 millimeters in horizontal extent and 2.5 millimeters in height. This photograph shows the relationship of fibrotic skeleton, that is the tarsus, the lateral canthal tendon here which is attached to the orbital tubercle of Wittners, and the medial canthal tendon here which is attached to the anterior lacrimal crest, the superficial head, passes below and posterior to the lacrimal sac, reaches the posterior lacrimal crest and attaches there as deep head. This shows the anatomy of the fibrotic structure in relation to the orbital. The orbital septum takes its origin as arcus marginalis from the junction between periorbita and the periosteum, and it is inserted into posterior lacrimal crest medially, orbital tubercle laterally. Superiorly, it attaches at the levator epiglottis and the inferior tarsal border, as seen here inferiorly. These pictures show that the orbital septum in the superior part is more thicker and well defined as compared to the orbital septum in the inferior lid. And it forms a very important surgical landmark as the fat pads are present below this, below which lie the elevators of the upper lid and the retractors of the lower lid. Now coming to the elevators of the upper lid, they are LPS muscle and the Muller's muscle. The levator palpebral superioris muscle travels horizontally into the orbit and then bends vertically to form aponeurosis which strands and insert into the anterior surface of the tarsus and the superior border of the tarsus. The Wittners ligament, as seen here, traverses from the trochlear pulley to the fascia of the orbital part of the lacrimal gland. It forms a very important surgical landmark again in the ptosis surgery. And the Muller's muscle is attached below, is present below the levator palpebral superioris muscle and is attached to the conjunctiva. Muller's muscle, as we all know, adds to 2 millimeters of elevation. Lower lid retractors are capsulopalpebral fascia and the inferior palpebral muscle, but they are less well defined as to their analog in the upper lid, which is the LPS. Fat pads, the upper lid are central fat pad and the medial fat pad. In the lower lid are medial lateral and central fat pads, again become a surgical landmark in surgeries to identify the elevators of the upper lid and retractors of the lower lid. It is important to identify any pathology present in the conjunctiva because it may cause cicatricial endoplions, as the tarsal conjunctiva is very strongly adherent to the tarsus and is impossible to separate it from tarsus. Thus, in cross section, it is important to remember that the levator muscle traverses ahead, gives slips to the superior fornix, and the superior fornix is suspended through the slips of levator muscle. Then coming down, there is a potential space above the LPS, below the LPS and above the tarsus, which gives a surgical landmark in ptosis surgery. And the slips from orbicularis muscle go into the skin to form the lid crease and lid fold. Similarly, in the lower lid, as we can see, skin, orbicularis muscle, the tarsus, orbital septum, retroseptal fat pad, and the retractors of the lower lid. This preseptal muscle, when it overrides the pretarsal muscle, gives rise to the characteristic hump of the involutional entropion cases. The nerve supply of the lids is through the facial nerve, 7 nerve through temporal and zygomatic branches, and the sensory supply is through supraorbital nerve, supratrochlear nerve, lacrimal nerve, and infratrochlear nerve to the and infraorbital nerve supplies the lower lid along with lacrimal nerve and infratrochlear nerve. The arterial supply is by medial palpebral artery and lateral palpebral artery. They join across the lid to form the superior marginal arcade present 3 mm away from the lid margin and upper lid, and inferior marginal arcade which is present 3 mm away from the lid margin and lower lid, and the superior peripheral arterial arcade. It is important to remember this as the incisions during the surgery should be placed so as to have manual bleeding so that the surgical field is bloodless, and in cases of complete transverse blepharotomies of these, there should be no necrosis of the proximal lid flap. The arteries are present in the submuscular space as told before. The venous drainage nasally is through angular vein which drains into internal jugular vein, and through the lateral part, from the lateral part, it is into the lacrimal veins which drain into external jugular vein, and the post-tarsal tissues drain into the ophthalmic veins. Thus, a layer by layer understanding of the lid is very important and crucial and essential for decision making in cases of entropion and ectropion. Thank you so much.